Alright y'all, so today we're going to be talking about dodge and why it's the most underrated skill in the game. Let's get right into it. So what I said in the intro, we're going to be talking about dodge today and why it's the most underrated skill in the game and why I think that's going to be making a very quick comeback. But before we get into that, got to get into the usual shenanigans. This video is sponsored by UPTO. We're using my code EGNE2. You can get anywhere from 5 to 65% off all in-game purchases. A full description of how to do so will be down in the description down below, as well as a link to my Patreon, the Discord, where we have a lot of people that are very knowledgeable in the game that can help you out with anything you want. But again, we're getting into the next month and, money might be tight because of bills, but my sponsor, UPTO, is a great way for any Android user to be able to get anywhere from 5 to 65% off all in-game purchases using my code EGNE2. All right, so we'll get into dodge. So first we got to explain what dodge is and the history of dodge. So dodge as the base stat, which there's only a few ants that actually have it, the SE being one of them, is the chance to literally negate all normal and skill damage given by the enemy. This skill is a very rare skill, as well as a highly underrated skill. But we got to get into the history of it a little bit first. So for people that have been playing for 3+ years, they remember when the Banshee Panda was extremely overpowered. And the reason being was the skill 2. At the time, it worked for all types of ants and would basically negate, for the first 4 rounds, it would negate any damage because it was entered in dodge state. They then since have changed that to where it's only the first time they're hit that they're able to enter the dodge state. Now with how many skill activations that we have nowadays, that essentially means that it's only the first round for all 3 squads that they're able to actually enter that dodge state and negate it out fully, which is what has made Banshee Panda not be as effective as it used to be, where Banshee Panda first was only was effective for all, guardian, shooter, and carrier, but then was transferred to only being a shooter ant, to where it would basically made shooters, no matter what, the meta because of this ant. And then they reworked the skill itself to where it's only the first time hit, which means even though it states as the first 4 rounds, it's actually still only the first round that they can actually dodge. And even though it says with the first 4 rounds, it still has a 70% chance to reduce the combat skill damage of the enemy by 40% each round. That's more like a shield effect than it is a dodge. The dodge is so overpowered and so rare of a skill because of the fact that it negates both normal damage and skill damage, which is why you don't see a lot of ants with it. Now, the reason why I've said many times on this channel that it's such an underrated skill, because it is so powerful if you have the right lineups. So why do I think this is going to be making a comeback? Well, we'll get into that and I'll explain it. So if you go and look at the SE, the Stromogenius Egasari, whatever, with its skill 5, it has an increased dodge rate of 20. And when you upgrade it fully, it goes all the way up to 25%. So that has a 25% chance to be able to negate out all damage, both normal and skill damage, which would mean it would be a direct counter to the Dolly Weaver combo, etc. Now, this is where I also think the carriers are going to be able to have a huge comeback and actually be one of the mainline ants in the future, or the mainline ability to be able to compete with shooters and with Guardian Marches is the meta right now. It's because if you look in what we have going on with Island and you go to the seasons, again, it's only carriers that have this. So you look at the support carrier Carpenter Ant for carriers, and it is okay. So for the first 4 rounds, all of our squad dodge rate plus 1%. But if it's upgraded fully, would be 20%, and normal attack resistance plus 35. So even if it doesn't dodge, it's able to resist the normal attack. So right there with the SE and then the Carpenter Ant is a 45% chance to dodge. Now if you look at the next ant that they are releasing, they have an additional 15%, which would make it 60% chance to dodge, and increases skill damage and control resistance for each 1% dodge rate of the squad. So if you have a 60% dodge rate, that's increasing 120% on skill damage and control resistance right there. Now on top of it, I believe it is that ant? No, it's LB, sorry. So if we go and look at LB, not that one. Okay, so then here you have as well that even just at the base is an additional 10%, putting it up to a 70% chance to dodge for 1 round. So you're increasing your dodge rate throughout it all. And then there's one of the season ants, and this is all theory crafting, but this is why I think that dodge is going to make a huge comeback and actually be rather OP. There is a skill on one of these. Oh yeah, so for right here. So in the number 2, 4, 6, and 8 round, deals 270% damage to all enemy squads. For each dodge by any of our squads, increases the damages by 10%. This effect is stackable. So if you have a 70% chance to dodge at that point, you're then being able to stack up to 700% of that skill. So for each dodge, it's an extra 10%. I'm sorry, it'd be a 70% chance to dodge with a maximal of each dodge increasing to 270, which means out of a round of 8 rounds, you have the chance of basically increasing it by 80%. So when you stack it with LB, which LB has 230. So like for this, it has to prepare for 2 rounds. So then you have the 75%. You could be hitting anywhere upwards of almost 2,000% on one hit just from the stack of dodge. So this is why I keep saying that dodge is such an underrated skill, and I keep telling carrier mains that they really need to hold out and they need to wait, because you guys are going to make a comeback in a way that a lot of people don't see, and it's going to be because of dodge, and it's going to be with the same problems that we had with the Banshee Panda in the early years of this game. It's going to have the same effect when this comes out. Again, this is speculation, but I think that this is how they plan on making the carriers come back and be so effective. Now, does this mean you're probably going to have to spend a lot to get the ants you need and the eggs you need and whatnot for your carrier march to be effective? Yes, but it's there, and it's going to put you stronger than shooter or guardians when this does come out and when people start getting the ants. So anyway, it was a shorter video. I hope this kind of explains kind of the history of dodge and why I keep saying that it's such an underrated skill, and give you a little bit of concept to be able to watch out for certain ants and how they interact with each other and help your own carrier squad. But anyway, this is Egne. I'm out. We'll see you in the next one.